Supernatural Tongren, not mystical, not cultivating immortality. Traveling to the universe of a supernatural seminary, that's great. The three kings must accept, and Hua Ye must die. What? Hua Ye is actually myself. Oh. It's okay then. What? Surprisingly, there is a setting that transcends time and space. This keywords. Divine Academy, Hero Company, Funny, Everyday, Star Wars, Time Traveling. Keywords of the novel. I am the Heavenly Palace King Hua Ye. No pop-ups, I am the Heavenly Palace King Hua Ye. Download the complete text, and read the latest chapters of the Heavenly Palace King Hua Ye. Chapter 1. I have an agreement with the future. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. I have an agreement with the future. Draw 10 girls to accompany me. Draw another picture of traditional Chinese medicine to regulate me. Draw a stove and firewood. Give birth to a few sons to serve me, on a vibrant planet, under the sky and cloud shadows, in a lush and cool jungle. The relaxed and melodious song gradually spreads and fades away. A man with silver blue armor and golden short hair tied with a golden belt sat leisurely on the grass under the tree, humming a song while his right hand, resting on his knee, was waving a branch in a bored manner. Brush, the grass shadows sway. In the grass, a groundhog was frightened and stood in place. It is only 30.40 centimeters tall, standing dumbfounded, with a small green iron hat that had just been crooked by a branch on its head, and a small gunpowder rifle in its hand. However, despite being so frightened, its small head was filled with happiness. Compared to its former counterparts who were smashed into flesh by giant stones, this was already fortunate. Although it doesn't know much, it can still feel that the heavenly god seems to be a bit gentle. Although not many. At this moment, the golden-haired man in the heart of the little marmot suddenly paused, as if he had remembered something. Sister. I'm tired. His eyes were a bit speechless. It's not because of anything else. He accidentally revealed his secrets again. As a traveler, Zhao Nian knew from the beginning that exposing his identity as a traveler was an absolute taboo. And any behavior or language that may lead to exposure is the lowest level of error. But without a doubt, he has just been exposed. Although there are no other advanced intelligent creatures on this planet except for him and the old lady Roland, and there is only a groundhog in front of us who cannot understand human language, but if exposed, it is exposed. Because Hua Ye is not familiar with the term, traditional Chinese medicine. No matter from any channel, Hua Ye cannot possibly know the term traditional Chinese medicine. In the supernatural universe, traditional Chinese medicine is the term used to refer to the traditional medicine of a nuclear power in a backward pre-nuclear civilization, located on the far side of the starry sky. At the scale of the universe, it is even smaller and imperceptible than dust. Yes, as a former time traveler from Little Poké Ball, a hardcore enthusiast of the Super Theological Academy, Zhao Nye actually traveled to the super divine universe. And it directly crossed over to the most satisfying villain in the known universe, Hua Ye. At first, Zhao Nye refused to accept this point. After all, you can't just ask me to wear it and I'll wear it. It wasn't until 30,000 years ago, when Hua Ye was the happiest. It's been 3 hours now, and I still feel a bit uncomfortable. Zhao Nye, no. Hua Ye shook his head and picked up the silly little marmot. He pinched the back of the marmot's neck and watched it tremble and please devoutly. As for Zhao Nye, after the short film moments he traveled through, he made a decision that went against his ancestors. In order to survive better in this world, from now on only Hua Ye, the name Zhao Nye, should not appear in this world. You seem to be feeling unwell, aren't you feeling a bit heatstroke? Hua Ye smiled at the little marmot and asked in the civilized language of the marmot. The little marmot blinked its little eyes and shook its head, saying, I don't have heatstroke, Lord Tianshan. Tisk. Hua Ye chuckled at the words and shook his head. He can speak, but he can't eat. The little groundhog blinked in confusion, and Hua Ye said this sentence in Shinhe language, which he couldn't understand. You can follow me from now on, you know too much. Hua Ye casually placed the little marmot on his lap and started to roll it up. Just like friends who know too many embarrassing things about themselves, such friends cannot be lost because you don't know if they will spread your embarrassing things around in case of a falling out. So, either be a lifelong friend, either go ahead. When he crossed over, he sat under this big tree and learned that Running was studying wormhole technology in a laboratory several tens of kilometers away. He sat here all along, gathering information from his past and present lives, and also thinking about how to go in the future. Only this little marmot is closest to him, and he needs to let it know that there is no secret to be heard in vain. Sigh. Brother men, why don't you think about it again? Do you still have any abilities in the void or anti-void that you forgot to teach me? Hua Ye rolled the groundhog and closed his eyes. In the pitch black, he looked at a tall stone door in the dark and asked in his heart. For this point, Hua Ye was not surprised from the beginning. Based on how many travel articles he had read in his past life, travelers usually come with their own system of golden fingers, so they have to bring some things anyway. Even later on, systematic literature became popular, and novels without systematic content were hardly read by anyone. After he wore it over, there was no system or a ding sound. He had been tinkling for a long time, but couldn't find ding. There was only this simple and heavy square stone door. 3 zhang high, 2 zhang wide, and then. It's gone. It is intelligent and calls itself the gate of the highest, and Huaye calls it the elder brother of the gate in a sensible way. But, there's really no such thing, Sherman replied. Its voice is distant, with a faint echo. In fact, it sounds 8 times more like Huaye's voice, so it should be a simulation. Huaye is speechless. From Shimon's answer, he could hear a hint of helplessness, perhaps because he was annoyed by his questions. But he can't do it without asking. In this world, it's so dangerous. How could anyone cross over and not give them golden fingers? There's no one asking, there's no one asking. No matter what, ability, resources, or technology, there is nothing special. But this is not scientific either. Hua Ye's consciousness stood in his dark plane, crossed his waist and speechless, trying to explain to Sherman. Firstly, crossing this kind of thing is itself a phenomenon of emptiness or anti-emptiness. Crossing is breaking the energy conservation of this universe, and there must be forces beyond time and space involved. Right. He raised his eyebrows and hinted to Sherman. Shimon's voice was leisurely. You know quite a bit. Hua Ye shrugged and said, look. No, the stone gate remained motionless. Hua Ye's hand froze in mid-air and said, Brother, this is the supernatural universe, a place that cannot be played without void engine and system. Hua Ye earnestly said, please do me a favor, at least give me a void engine. Even if it's the lowest version, according to my understanding of the supernatural universe, it's not a problem to win the cold ice in 3 days, conquer Kaisha in 5 days, and gather all 3 kings in a week. At that time, if we want to scrape, we can scrape, if we want to take a shower, we can also have some ice cream every now and then. I promise we can eat and drink spicy food together, even if you want a short skirt. His words may be a bit exaggerated, but they are not really nonsense. As a hardcore enthusiast of the supernatural school, especially after reading the supernatural and humanistic works of an author named Yiming Dakian, my understanding of the supernatural universe can be said to be meticulous. In this world, as long as you give him a void engine, he can carry the entire scene. Overthrow Caesar's theocratic rule and restore the order of the heavenly palace, it's just around the corner. When the time comes, as long as you hang out with him, Huaye Wang, each person will have a small skirt. Well, it's meaningless, Sherman replied calmly. Huaye paused for a moment and said in confusion, what is meaningless? Eating delicious food and drinking spicy food is meaningless, and a short skirt is meaningless, Shimon's voice remained calm. It's meaningless for you to waste time with me. I am the gate of the highest, and for you now, I can only be considered a tool for crossing dimensions of time and space. I cannot help you with the void engine you mentioned, then you. Hua Ye asked. If you have the ability to control time and space, and even the ability to control constant star energy, you can make initial use of my power, Sherman answered Huaye's question. Tisk. Huaye didn't leave any more ink marks. In fact, he had already polished the stone gate many times in these 3 hours. I dare not be intimidated, but temptation cannot be achieved. The little skirt is not interested in him yet. Although he wants to ask if it is interested in Sun Monkey, he still thinks about it. So, everything still depends on me. Hua Ye opened his eyes, speechless. But what does he have? What does Huaye have? Mian Chang Chang second. Generation divine body, exiled as a body of guilt, only has the highest honor of a divine knight. Carl's grandson doesn't have to rely on anything, he understands everything. Ruoning. Ruoning is still loyal to her Kaisha queen, we still have to go to the Earth Star. This point, during these 3 hours of summarization and reflection, has already been added by Huaye to his own plans for the future. The reason is simple. There is no system or the help of the void engine. In today's known universe, there are almost only many top-level resources that it is possible to obtain on Earth. And only when he returns to Earth can he set a time scale for his current position, such as the more than 17,000 years of the divine calendar, which he cannot understand. And, Huaye's face showed some ambiguous smiles. However, before that, there is one thing that I need to confirm first. Putting aside all other thoughts for the time being, Huaye's expression suddenly became serious. His eyes were reserved, but deep down he was really a bit nervous. A matter, an extremely important matter, cannot be neglected by him. I saw him sitting under the tree, still in a lazy posture, holding a stunned and bewildered groundhog in his hand. His gaze was fixed on the clear and transparent half-sky before his eyes, unknown to everyone, silently reciting in his heart. On the 5th day of the 5th month of the 17th lunar month in the Gregorian calendar, at 9:54.21 am. Shinha Universe, Yodel Star, Southern Dense Forest, Geographic Coordinates. I, Huaye, the king of the ancient heavenly palace, swear by the reputation of Ruoning. No matter what happens in the future or for any reason, I will not inform others of this oath. I, the king of the ancient heavenly palace, Huaye, if there is a possibility of crossing time in the future, I will return to the current time cut-off point and current location. Tell me today whether there are any other forces for cross-dimensional temporal and spatial transitions in the future besides Sherman. I have agreed with the future to remind you of a time point. May 5th, in the year 17022 of the Holy Calendar, at 9:54.59 in the morning. Huaye quietly looked at the void in front of him, with no expression on his face. After silently swearing in his heart, he quietly waited for time to pass. The sky is quiet, the breeze is not dry, and the breeze gently brushes his golden bangs, soft and peaceful. Time quietly arrived at 9:54.59 in the morning. Without any warning, the air in front of Huaye suddenly changed, as if it was being pulled, twisted, and transformed by some intangible force. Have a semi-transparent handwriting appeared in mid-air, with sunlight shining on it, reflecting a golden color. Huaye's pupils contract instantly. Hiss. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Theory of Time and Space Travel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The Theory of Time and Space Travel. Gravity Anomaly, Changes in Spatiotemporal Dimensions, Parallel Spatiotemporal Lateral Derivatives, Warning, Abnormal Gravitational Waves Detected, Please be alert to strikes across time and space dimensions. The gravitational anomaly wave has disappeared. The sound of Sherman echoed in Huaye's mind at the same time, but he was temporarily not in the mood to pay attention. The golden word, you, quietly disappeared, and the air was peaceful, as if nothing had happened. Damn it! This is Xiongsan's setting. In an instant, Hua Ye felt a chill all over him, as if there were countless eyes peering at him in the surrounding void. Even a future person may suddenly come and give him a fatal blow. The warm sunshine in the morning shone on him, no longer bringing him much warmth. This Nemes is too much nonsense. Xiong San setting, crossing time and space, the legendary Carl of the Xiong Bing Company, the legendary time and space of the Xiong Bing Company. Your sister, how can you play this special game? I have to admit that at this moment, Hua Ye is somewhat panicked. Traveling to the supernatural universe is already difficult enough. After all, the setting here is more absurd than many myths and legends, dark data that can be insightful, where the past behavior of the weak is clear in front of the strong. The sacred form after the fall of the three kings allows one to freely observe all corners of the known universe. The mysterious and unpredictable space principle, the god of death Carl, who is tens of thousands of years ahead of others, this doesn't even count. Huaye himself is still a huge red-named monster. If it weren't for Kaisha keeping him alive, he would have been gone long ago. How is it now, another time and space travel? Time and space travel, what is that? Xiong Sanli's performance. Du Qiangwei's consciousness returned to the past while studying the laws of spacetime in black holes, seeing the cold ice of the past and communicating with it. And Liang Bing also said that she saw Du Qiangwei's past in the same way, but she didn't do anything, and Du Qiangwei couldn't notice it. Until the end, when Hua Ye became a phantom and the protagonist group could not rule on him, it was Time and Space Rose who used the time hourglass given by the space principle and then solved him through a series of means such as interfering with the past. Although Mr. Hua did not die, he was also forced to fall into the chaos of time and space. Of course, in the end, Mr. Hua also pulled Gu Xiaoluan to support him, creating a legendary pulley. Although speaking of it, that Hua Ye is not this Hua Ye. But at this moment, Hua Ye is also afraid that future people will come and fuck him now, and even if he doesn't come and do it, he can't stand just a leak of information. You should know that he is a traveler, and the traveler naturally relies on prior knowledge to gain an advantage. He doesn't have any other cheats yet. But besides the leakage of dark information, what else could he do if there were a future person who had traveled back in the void at this moment, staring at him silently all the time? In this world of technology gods, any slight logical error in behavior is likely to arouse suspicion from the gods. The gods use the powerful calculations and reasoning of celestial computers. His identity as a traveler may have been exposed as soon as he was exposed. For example, the two Chinese medicine words he blurted out before were a huge loophole. Even if there is no one else around, and even if others perceive his dark data, they may not necessarily notice this, but with the ability to trace back in time and space, there is simply nothing to hide. This king is really too difficult. At this thought, Hua Ye couldn't help but tighten his hand and felt powerless, lazily piling himself up under the roots of the tree. This setting is broken, there's not much room for improvement. After all, at the end of the day, he only knows a lot about the plot of supernatural beings, and is not a true god. Moreover, it is crucial that no one has written about this type of supernatural fan before, he has not read it, and he has nowhere to draw inspiration from it. The little marmot's face was wrinkled by being pinched, but it dared not make a sound. What are you playing with? The voice of Sherman suddenly appeared in Hua Ye's heart. Ah! Hua Ye lazily replied. The oath of time and space. The voice of Sherman continued to ring, even with a hint of curiosity. It seems that there are abnormal gravitational waves, as if someone is crossing the dimensions of time and space to convey information to you, and it is likely to be in good faith. Did you just make the oath of time and space? Ah! What appointment! Hua Ye felt like he didn't understand, but after thinking about it, he seemed to understand again. Oh! Is this thing called the time and space oath? He did make a promise with his future self, and miraculously, it really came into effect. You're really a genius. Sherman praised directly upon hearing this. Although the oath of time and space is a trivial matter, few people can realize it without anyone's guidance. Generally average, third in the world. Hua Ye waved his hand casually. How could you suddenly lose interest in witnessing such a miraculous event? Sherman curiously asked, why? Upon hearing Shimon's curiosity, Hua Ye's eyes twitched slightly, and he suddenly had some thoughts about certain questions in his heart. But soon, he buried these ideas in his heart. Speaking again in his heart, he roughly told Sherman about what had just happened silently, as well as his own thoughts. Surprisingly, it's because of this. Sherman said strangely after listening. Then he said, are you dead now? Hua Ye was taken aback at the words. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he seemed to have realized something. Are you saying? I didn't say anything, Shimon's voice said leisurely. I don't want to say anything either. The Stone Gate God is mysterious, but Hua Ye is not entangled. After all, they are not very familiar. However, brother men, do you really understand too much? He chuckled, can you teach me? It has to be said that after discovering the setting of time and space travel, he suddenly realized that this stone gate didn't seem to be so useless. Not only did he know some time and space oath, but he also seemed to have been reminded of gravitational anomalies before. I don't want to teach, I can't teach, it's not easy to teach, Sherman refused. Hua Ye clicked and said, why? You have shallow knowledge and can't learn many things at all. I don't intend to teach you either. The problem of crossing time and space dimensions is extremely complex, and the reasons are also extremely variable. It cannot be explained clearly in just a few words, nor can it be deeply touched by you now. Sherman said again, I also hope you don't ask further questions. Hua Ye paused for a moment, then indeed did not ask further. But speaking of it this way, it seems like even if I stay here and don't do anything, I can do it. He suddenly thought to himself as he masturbated the little marmot. Sherman didn't speak. I wonder if he wasn't interested or if he had been worn out by Hua Ye in the past 3 hours. You see, I have made an agreement with the future, and I have answered my questions through time and space, Hua Ye continued to imagine with a bright expression in his eyes. This indicates that I have the ability to travel through time and space in the future. Since I have grown to this point in the future, even if I don't do anything now, I will definitely grow to that point. Not necessarily. Sherman spoke again. It suddenly realized that this guy's head seemed to be densely packed with holes, and sitting here, he began to daydream. Ah. Hua Ye was curious. Is his theory wrong? How can you guarantee that the person who just answered you will definitely be the future you? Sherman retorted with ease. Hua Ye suddenly widened his eyes. But I clearly. End of this chapter. Chapter 3 Hua Ye. Dear. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Dear Hua Ye, Infinite Future, Parallel Time and Space, Infinite Possibilities. Sherman seems like a knowledgeable elder. How can you ensure that your temporal and spatial vows are fully realized according to your ideas? When you swore, you didn't even use your own personality to guarantee it. How can you hope for an infinite future with endless variables? What if the person just now was someone else? Even if it's the future of you, how can you guarantee that you will be sending messages under what circumstances in the future? Is it possible that you were just a prisoner at that time? Hua Ye was speechless directly. No wonder this old man said that the problem of crossing time and space dimensions is extremely complex. Indeed, what he is doing is only superficial, and even a little deeper is terrifying to think about. Even if you were not a prisoner at that time, is it possible that your path to the future was originally a bright one, but precisely because of your own laziness and inaction, it led to a bumpy journey, with yourself covered in bruises, and finally struggled to reach that step? Sherman continued to ask in reverse. How much do you think this possibility is? Is it possible? All right. I understand. Hua Ye waved his hand directly and said, thank you very much for your teachings, brother. That is to say, I could have obtained all the short skirts, but because of my inaction now, the long legs and short skirts in the supernatural world may all have nothing to do with me in the end. At that time, I can only watch these goddesses and other male gods holding hands to show their love in front of me. He directly extrapolated. That won't work. There is no doubt that from the first second he arrived in this world, he never thought of lying flat. Not to mention the risks he may face in the present and future while staying here. Survival, power, freedom, power, and the threat to the world, he naturally wants all of them. This is a man's instinct. Of course, beautiful women come naturally. Sasha, Cece, Bing Bing, Yen Yen, Lin Lin, Nana, Vivi Hihi, that's the truth, although your way of giving examples is a bit vulgar. Sherman affirmed, so even if the future is predetermined, the scenery along the way can still be chosen by oneself, let alone the endless future and infinite possibilities, which are not predetermined. Hua Ye is deeply educated. That is to say, although he has verified the possibility of time and space travel, he cannot be deterred, nor can he completely rely on pie falling from the sky. At this moment, he also deeply realized that the help brought to him by this gatekeeper was indeed significant. Even if it is still unwilling to teach him, these exchanges of information are definitely an extremely precious form of teaching. The saying goes, 1,000 laymen are few, and one sentence is for the layman. But if I can really hope that the sky will fall, I will be a bit excited. During the conversation, Hua Ye stood up and lazily stretched his waist. Analyze, and return to the initial starting point. The void engine is not available, and brother men cannot be of any help. He only has a second-generation divine body. In other words, what he can rely on is what Hua Ye originally had at this time, some of which can be used, while others cannot. There are two paths, one is like the original Hua Ye, waiting for Kaisha to fall. Karl and Ronan will contact each other and then load the black hole engine given by Karl. The second is to try on your own and walk your own path. There's no need to mention Karl's grandson's black hole engine. Hua Ye, who is familiar with the supernatural storyline, certainly knows that in this world of technology gods, using someone else's things may directly control one's lifeline. Besides, the other party is Karl's grandson, who has been around for thousands of years, so this matter is beyond doubt. In the original supernatural world, Hua Ye knew he was just Karl's test subject, and various signs showed that Karl could not only use the black hole engine to obtain Hua Ye's action data, obtain data on many civilizations taught by Hua Ye, but also directly counteract Hua Ye. Even when Hua Ye tried to persuade Angelico to join forces against Karl, he was immediately warned by Karl's super long-range warning, using the void power inside his body to counterattack Hua Ye. So Hua Ye, who is familiar with all of this, certainly cannot choose this path. After all, he is still a traveler after all. Ultimately, it still depends on oneself. However, but then again, I still have an idea. Hua Ye scratched the little marmot's chin, his eyes thinking more. Do you have any ideas again? Sherman chuckled. To be honest, it now admires this guy's one idea after another. An ordinary person who has never been exposed to the true theory of time and space shuttle, but in a short period of time, he made 1 or 2 time and space shuttle experiments through imagination. It can't be underestimated. It originally didn't want to pay attention to his problems in time and space, but it couldn't resist his idea one after another. Look, Hua Ye tentatively said, since I have already teamed up with the future me, is it still possible for me to provide some support to the future me? He is willing to exchange his ideas with Sherman, but in a short conversation, he has already realized that this Sherman elder brother is clearly a master in time and space shuttle, but he just doesn't want to teach him much. Sherman paused, his tone also somewhat surprised. Are you saying? It seemed to understand Hua Ye's thoughts directly and remained somewhat silent for a moment. Although, it wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, it just said, actually, I want to advise you to be cautious. Cross-temporal and spatial operations inevitably have risks that are difficult for you to control now, and there are also many variables, and your ideas are not easy to implement. But the decision is up to you. In fact, according to normal circumstances, even if Hua Ye is a time traveler, it is almost difficult to transform from an ordinary person to a person who manipulates the dimensions of time and space in just a few hours. But it can only be said that high-dimensional intelligence and time and space are indeed unpredictable. Unfortunately, we can't try it now. Hua Ye changed his tone, but he didn't immediately put his idea into practice. He looked around and felt a little regretful because, Hua Ye, where are you? Just then, a middle-aged woman's voice suddenly rang in his ear. Ruaning. Hua Ye's eyelids twitched imperceptibly. Then, he casually threw away the little groundhog, with a greasy smile on his face. Darling, your research is over. I happen to have something to tell you. Not long after, a worm gate suddenly appeared, and a figure with chestnut-long hair appeared next to Huaye. The black gilded lightweight armor, with mature and sexy thighs mostly wrapped in leather armor, but half hidden and half exposed at the base of the thighs, and a small door curtain hung in the most private place. The middle-aged woman's face, dark red eyeliner and dark red lips are swollen. A refreshing fragrance followed, refreshing the heart and soul, causing a primitive impulse to rise directly in Huaye's body. This instantly surprised Huaye. After all, according to his previous life's aesthetics, at this moment, the anti-running was definitely not considered beautiful in his eyes. However, he quickly realized that it was not his impulse towards Roland, but rather the scum genes in his body that were causing the problem. Quietly suppressing this impulse, Hua Ye still walked towards running with 3 parts greasy, 3 parts appreciative, and 3 parts colored squinting eyes. Naturally, he reached out to grab Ruo Ning's slender waist. Use the other hand to hold the other person's hand. What's up? What's up? Ruo Ning's gaze remained calm and he naturally let him hold her. I want to go out and take a walk. Hua Ye chuckled. Turning around. Where are we going? Ruo Ning's eyes slightly changed as she heard the words. The voice also faded a bit. End of this chapter. Chapter 4 Destinations. Milky Way, Chiu star system, Earth's globe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Destinations. Milky Way, Chiu star system, and Earth's globe. However, regarding the change in her gaze, Hua Ye turned a blind eye and continued to wear that lazy smile, with a hint of just right flattery in it. Walking in the forest, holding on to Running's waist and arms, like some kind of person holding on to the old Buddha. Mavis just contacted me and said he has obtained a few bottles of good wine. Please let me go and taste it. Hua Ye said with a serious tone. Upon hearing these words, Ruo Ning's lips curved into a cold smile. Mavis, she knows that this person was Hua Ye's former captain of the SS. After Hua Ye's defeat, Mavis was not executed by Kaisha because he was not considered a Class A war criminal. Like many scumbags from the Tiankai Legion, he was only exiled. It is worth mentioning that Mavis, including a group of exiled scum, was still guarding Hua Ye for the first period of time after being exiled. However, as time passed and there was no hope of Hua Ye's resurgence, these members of the SS gradually left and began to wander around. Speaking of which, Mavis should be considered the last to leave Hua Ye, and can be considered loyal. And in these years, there have indeed been some old faces in Tianjia who occasionally contact Kong and Hua Ye, and of course, Mavis is one of them. I've been thinking about how I can never let down his filial piety, Hua Ye said, looking at Ruo Ning affectionately. So, maybe I won't be able to accompany you for this period of time. He is not only affectionate, but also carries a hint of reluctance. Ruo Ning quietly finished watching him pretend to be a prank, and then his dark red lips curled up, half smiling. That's it. What kind of good wine, can it taste better than at home? Otherwise, I'll go taste it with you. After speaking, he sneered at him. Cough. Hua Ye coughed lightly at the words and waved his hand somewhat unnaturally. I estimate that since it's good wine, there may not be many bottles, so there won't be enough people to drink. Well, I'll leave first. Speaking, he picked up the little marmot and turned around in a slight panic to leave. I saw his white wings tremble behind him and fly towards the distance. Not long after, a small aircraft took off from the horizon and flew towards the sky. Ruo Ning quietly watched everything and sneered, "Dogs can't change their habit of eating shit. What kind of bullshit is treating you to a drink? It's just that thing in the old pervert's pocket that can't resist loneliness anymore. He wants to go out and have a picnic." Of course, with the current status and strength of this old pervert, she is just a feather in this era. Apart from her, Hua Ye cannot possibly collude with a true female angel warrior. At most, it is to collude with mortals with angelic ancestry, the new generation of old Merlot people, or the young and ignorant descendants of angels. As for those outside the angelic realm, this old pervert is not interested anymore. Drinking alcohol or something, it's just a lie on the surface. She just saw through the data and Mavis didn't even contact him. Don't die outside. Ruo Ning sneered in the communication and left unhappily. Originally, she had just come out of the laboratory and wanted Hua Ye to give her a thorough understanding and relax her muscles and bones. Unexpectedly, before she could say it out, this guy was about to go out and surf. By the way, she didn't have much mood anymore. She just didn't care, it's been thousands of years and that's how it has been. After all, this guy still has some benefits. A group of cowards dare not come openly or go back to bring women. Woohoo. That's this feel, it's so refreshing. Bei Shuang. Refreshing and refreshing. Everybody, relatives and aunties, can I see your hands? In the boundless space, the starry sky is deep and seemingly void, making people feel the insignificance of life at a glance. In this void and depth, a small aircraft navigates alone. But in this lonely aircraft, the atmosphere is indeed somewhat lively. Auntie, oh 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 oh, the little marmot circled its eyes and was later pulled up by Hua Ye as a dance partner, with its small arms and legs being pulled back and forth. After a while, he used it as a microphone and was overwhelmed by the sound of the broken gong. Until it was thrown away by Hua Ye, one could still see the other person dancing happily. Ha! I'm really a genius. After enjoying himself for a while, Hua Ye took a breath and happily sat in the cockpit of the aircraft. He also placed the bewildered little marmot on the passenger seat and fastened his seatbelt. If those old ladies force me to stay, I have no choice but to sacrifice my appearance today. As he fiddled with the cockpit of the aircraft based on his original memory, a hint of fear also appeared on his face. Because speaking of it, from his awakening to now, he has been heading westward. Although it may seem smooth sailing, his situation is not good, and he can even be considered stepping on a deadly landmine. Putting aside the divine time and space shuttle or the threat of future people, Ruo Ning is a danger within reach. Although the danger may be great or small, it all depends on his acting skills and whether he can get by playing Hua Ye. Not to mention the potential risks that may be exposed, even the smallest risk is not something he can easily accept, because Ruo Ning would fuck him. After all, no matter what, his relationship with Ruolin at this time can also be considered as a lover. It's really common to have a fight during the day and night, in the palace, in the wilderness, in the grass, in the forest, under the pine trees, in the well once he has just failed to leave, according to their daily routine, there will definitely be a big battle at night. Although she was also considered a semi-old Sun Yang, I was really drawn out and looked around in confusion. However, in fact, Ruo Ning was still beautiful when she was young. Hua Ye sat leisurely on the chair, his thoughts slightly divergent. He broke away from the loose and tight state he had when he first arrived at Yodel Star, and his spirit also slightly eased. But it's not possible either, he thought and shook his head. For thousands of years, Ruo Ning has been so familiar with Hua Ye's habits, especially In other words, a change in accent does not indicate a problem, and a change in taste does not indicate a problem. Aha. Alright, I don't want to. After a little relaxation, Hua Ye withdrew his thoughts. Time and space future experiments. No, it's still too early, at least we'll have to wait long enough to leave before we can. Although the old ladies like Ruoning usually don't follow him when he goes out to mess around, they always turn a blind eye to him. However, this matter is of great significance, and he cannot help but be careless. Worm Bridge Station. And then go to the Sean Cross Galaxy. Fraser Star. It seems like neither of them works. Hua Ye pulled out a star map and looked at the complex coordinates of the starry sky on it. While suppressing the emotions of ordinary people, he also fell into contemplation. During those 3 hours, he thought a lot, but due to time constraints, besides carefully considering issues such as time travel and detachment from running, his plans for other issues were still relatively rough. The Sean Cross Star and the Fraser Star are important parts of his development plan, as they are both huge resource points for him, regardless of whether future experiments in time and space are reliable or not. But upon closer examination, he may not be able to go to these two places yet. So, it's still a terrestrial star. Then let's go. Destination. Milky Way, Chiu Star System, Earth Star. Oh, it's my first time getting on the Great Worm Bridge. I don't know if the speed is fast or not. End of this chapter. That's not how the script is portrayed in Chapter 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That's not how the script is portrayed in Chapter 5 1 month later. Hey. It's so boring, so boring. In the silent and boundless space, the small shuttle boat sailed leisurely. In the quiet cabin, Hua Ye sat on a chair, legs folded and resting on the control panel. Looking out the transparent window at the pitch-black and starry sky, he let out a long sigh of boredom. I'm so tired of playing with you every day. As he spoke, he casually threw the mouse in his arms. Little groundhog. We are about to reach the Earth star in the Chiu stellar system. Please choose whether to cross the atmosphere. In the cabin, the system prompt sound of the shuttle boat is on. Upon hearing this, Hua Ye's spirit shook and he said directly, no need. During the conversation, a blue planet gradually magnified in the field of vision. The shuttle of this galaxy will be moored in outer space outside of Earth. Please select the corresponding synchronous Earth coordinates, then. Juxia City, Hua Ye thought for a moment and replied. No information related to Juxia City was retrieved in the system. Scanning the Earth's infinite radio wave information, successful scan, and calculating the docking orbit. The sound of the shuttle system startled Hua Ye for a moment, realizing that he seemed to have made another mistake similar to traditional Chinese medicine. He shook his head nonchalantly. Don't worry if you have too much debt. Since realizing the truth that dizziness cannot be considered death, he doesn't pay too much attention to these details. During this month, he thought of many things. And during this month, he has also been to some other places. On the route from Yodel to Earth, he deliberately visited some other civilizations, which is not considered a direct trip to Earth. After a month, he also truly began to adapt to a new world and a new identity. Starting from an ordinary person who hurriedly chooses their way forward, then digesting Hua Ye's existing knowledge, encountering various civilizations, adapting to the days in the starry sky, the excitement of being alone, and gradually getting used to it, feeling bored. I don't know what time it will be, but if we start rescuing Qilin directly from Airport Road, it would be pretty good. Looking at the blue planet getting closer and closer in space, Hua Ye thought, with some inexplicable emotions in his eyes. Without intervening at the time when he originally entered the Earth battlefield, he could not be certain of where the current plot went. With the city of Juxia, the Earth should have roughly entered the pre-nuclear era, and looking at the less bustling outer space, it is likely that gluttony has not yet invaded the Milky Way on a large scale. Tisk, it's time to shave too. Hua Ye thought for a moment and took advantage of the slow deceleration of the spaceship to deal with his weathered stubble. Then he took out a small set of blue and white armor from the dark side and let the little marmot put it on himself. This is the exoskeleton armor he customized for this little thing from an aerospace civilization. Although its attack power can be negligible compared to a super warrior, it can at least ensure the survival of this little thing in some special situations. I was still very young when I was young. Looking at himself with his beard hanging in the mirror, his lewd aura was swept away, and he was actually quite handsome and heroic. Hua Ye chuckled. In fact, there is one thing only he knows, which is that his past life and Hua Ye actually look very similar. But he is younger. So in his past life, when he was watching a supernatural seminary, his perspective was completely different from others. Cough. Alright, my car is parked here, let me see when the Earth is now and where to start. The shuttle slowly approached Earth's orbit, and Hua Ye picked up the little marmot wearing blue and white armor and walked out of the hatch. We should first find a place to conduct a spatiotemporal experiment, and then. Somali. Standing in space, contemplating the next plan, while looking towards the direction of Earth. Start scanning the radio waves. Suddenly, he froze for a moment and then looked in another direction in space. I'll go, what kind of ghost is this? Not too far away from him and his vehicle, towering black creatures quietly lurk in space, cold steel beasts and stargazing ships. Each ship has a long strip shape and is loaded with guns of various sizes. It seems that the battleship of Tao Tai doesn't look like this, does it? It has to be said that Hua Ye suddenly felt a bit confused. This seems different from the script, doesn't it? Whoosh. But before he could think much, he fired a laser cannon at him head-on. Boom. 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 Meanwhile, within the fleet. General Joshua, if you fire without warning, will it lead to unnecessary complications? In the main ship of the fleet, in the command room, a soldier wearing a blue combat uniform looked at the blonde man in front of him, worried. The vast command room is filled with blue light and darkness, with control consoles and screens scattered all over. A famous soldier from the Shinha River body is performing his duties, and images are displayed one by one. One of the images is a laser cannon shooting fiercely, a small shuttle boat shattered by the explosion, and a blue and white figure faintly visible. The blond man, known as General Joshua, was tall and burly, with a rough complexion. Upon hearing this, he frowned and replied, "What does it mean to have branches outside the world? We are at a crucial moment in our confrontation with Dutsao. Once the Earth refuses to hand over the temporal and spatial roses in an hour, our actions to freeze the Earth naturally do not require anyone else's knowledge. But the other person looks like an angel. The current Shinda Noa is fearless of any enemy, including angels." Joshua immediately drank off the opponent's questioning, tiger-eyed with power. This is still the original words that new Deno Commander Calvin said to him not long ago. Yes. The soldier snorted upon hearing the words. Joshua's face softened slightly and he said, "Moreover, this guy is not an angel at all." He pointed to a previous shot and said, "Angels are all a group of playful women, but this unlucky guy is clearly a man. This kind of thing should be called a scumbag." This picture clearly shows the divine river creature descending from the small aircraft, although with a pair of white wings, it is a man's face. Although the new Deno civilization is not much better in terms of cosmic activities than the previously closed-door Deno civilization and has limited knowledge of the angel civilization, it is still a divine-level civilization, and this general knows some common knowledge. Even if you kill a creature like Tianjia, no one will care about it. At most, it's only the first-generation divine body. Take a team to take a look, and if he's lucky enough not to die, you can help him escape. Joshua said, waving his hand directly. Yes. The soldier responded loudly, then led a group of soldiers to drive the battle boat out of the fleet, through wormholes, and flew towards the ruins of the shuttle boat that day. Standing still, Joshua looked coldly at the earth on another screen, with a slight sneer at the corner of her mouth. The rose of time and space can only bloom in the new Deno civilization, and the Deno civilization will never forgive traitors. Whether it's Takeo or roses. At this moment, all he had in his eyes was this blue planet, with only the spacetime rose above. As for the unlucky scum on the other side, it's just a bug that was casually beaten to death on the rise of new Deno. Of course, bugs don't think so. Or rather, the esteemed Mr. Hua doesn't think so. I'm cool and gonly. Hua Ye, with a disheveled face and a small marmot in his arms, looked at his car, which had been shattered by a laser cannon, and a hint of heartache flashed in his eyes. His precious car. The antimatter engine spacecraft that accompanied him for a month. He didn't know what was going on, but he was blown up by someone unknown. Looking up at the vast and terrifying black fleet in the distance, Hua Ye was burning with anger. Don't let me know which bastard is so ungrateful. Otherwise, one day I will destroy your whole family. Kill your 9 clans. The yolks will shake apart. He waved his hand and summoned a fiery level-long sword, with fierce eyes shining. Suddenly, a wormhole appeared and battle boats jumped over. Hua Ye's expression was shocked. He thought for a moment, then turned around and ran. This is really not right. The script is not played like this. You play with time, and time also plays with you. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Chasing and Silver Blade. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Chasing and Silver Blade. In the pitch-black space, besides anger, Hua Ye's heart was also extremely depressed. The sound of Sherman teasing time echoed in his mind, and he didn't know if what the other person was saying was right or not. Anyway, he felt like things were a bit beyond his control. The bewildered timeline, the space fleet that was not in his memory, looked at the wormhole, and perhaps even the spaceship of a divine civilization. Then suddenly attacked him. What is all this and what is it? Is there this section in the Xiongming company? He didn't know, but now he only knew that 5 pitch-black rectangular combat boats were closely following behind him, occasionally firing plasma laser cannons at him. He flapped his wings, constantly flipping and dodging. If it weren't for this month, he had already become proficient in flying and worked hard to master the sky scum genes and body combat instincts. He was afraid it would really be difficult to dodge one by one. However, even so, occasionally a laser cannon flew past his body, which was extremely thrilling. The laser cannon exploded, at least with a killing power of several tens of meters radius. This is so special. It's definitely not worth fighting. Chasing and evading, the speed quickly reached several hundred kilometers per second. Hua Ye licked a hint of blood at the corner of his mouth, feeling speechless in his heart. Mr. Hua used to be considered a dominant figure, dominating the country. Even according to the original plot. After obtaining the black hole engine, he was still blocked by the gods and killed by the Buddha, but the tiger fell to the ground and was bullied by the dog. Today, he was chased by several unknown soldiers. And apart from a heavenly sword and some ordinary flame-level weapons, he has no other power to wield. And these forces are definitely not worth looking at in front of the enemy's formed battle teams, and even in front of the fleet. In fact, this is also the reason why he ran away without hesitation after being chased by the other party. In this era, Mr. Hua is just a bird's hair worth. He glanced at the nearby blue planet, his mind thinking wildly, and remembered the 2 things he first wanted to do when he came to Earth. These 2 things, of course, are both related to enhancing strength. No, we should go to the moon. There is an atmosphere on Earth, and when crossing the atmosphere, the friction and deceleration with the atmosphere may actually make it possible for people behind to catch up with him first, and whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. The laser once again brushed against Hua Ye's cheek, and the burning and piercing sensation made his hair stand on end. Although the defense of the second-generation divine body is second only to that of the third-generation divine body, which can be immune to nuclear radiation, it cannot be killed by ordinary shell bombardment, but it cannot be destroyed by too many explosions. Hey! Birdman ahead! Stop running! No matter how hard you run, it won't help. Don't worry. We're just following orders and won't cause you much pain. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Birdman. Ha ha ha. Yes, don't run away. Laughter was transmitted to Huaye's ears through dark communication, and his gaze froze, instantly becoming cold. Without looking back, he could also imagine the arrogant smiles in those battle boats. You servants have no right to speak to me. With a cold snort, Huaye's eyes were extremely cold. In an instant, the fatigue of his past and present life suddenly transformed into an indifferent killing intent. For some reason, Huaye suddenly had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. In a brief moment, savoring it carefully, he seemed to have some enlightenment. From the beginning of his journey through time, and even until he was pursued, there was always a sense of drift and estrangement in his heart. Perhaps it was the mask effect of his past life playing the role of this life, or perhaps too many preconceived plans in his heart quietly isolated him from the real world, but at this moment, he truly felt the killing intent in his heart. It is from the past life, it is from this life, and it is also what Huaye should have as Wang Yuan. Combine and be unique. Cold killing intent. Let you live a few more seconds. Whoosh. Suddenly, Huaye made a strange flash, and the perfect combat genes of the Angel Royal clan completely overwhelmed the clumsy combat boat with their super high agility, causing him to instantly distance himself horizontally from the enemy behind and appear more than 10 kilometers to the right of the opponent's formation. Before the other side could respond, he turned the boat to pursue him, and a strange spatial fluctuation directly floated around him. The next second, it will directly transform into a white light and fly towards the distance, instantly disappearing in place. Warp Cruise. In the pursuit battle boat formation, the soldier who had previously spoken to Joshua was instantly shocked and made a sound. His eyes were full of disbelief. At the same time, there was also some silence in the formation channel, and the sound of breathing was clear and audible. Warp cruising, this speed is not comparable to our combat boats unless the main ship supports. The soldier hesitated and was also the captain of this squad. Warp cruising, warp sailing, warp engines, and the minimum speed is also the speed of light. This is only one level of warp speed. If the warp speed level goes up, tens or millions of times the speed of light is ordinary, it only depends on the ability of the warp engine. He hesitated because as a high-level civilization warrior, he knew that this level of gene engine ability was unlikely to be possessed by the first generation of divine beings. That is to say, the other party is at least a second-generation divine body. Of course, it cannot be a third-generation divine body, so the other party doesn't have to run away, Captain. It seems that the opponent is flying towards the moon. Suddenly, a soldier in the formation shouted. The team leader was taken aback for a moment and confirmed the feedback data from the combat boat. Indeed, within a few seconds, the opponent landed directly on the moon, and the fluctuation was not small, making it easy to detect. However, after some thought, he still dialed General Joshua's secret communication. Report to General Joshua, that scumbag is capable of single-body warp cruising, suspected to be a second-generation divine body, and our combat boat is difficult to pursue. However, the opponent has landed on the surface of the moon with unknown intentions. May I ask if the general will continue to pursue them inside the main ship of Shindanua? Joshua frowned upon hearing the words and understood the captain's meaning directly. Then he said in a deep voice, "You continue to pursue, and if necessary, you can use the Godslayer sniper rifle. And I will send a new formation to support through the wormhole, maybe faster than you, who? What's going on?" Boom. Before he could finish speaking, an explosion came and the dark communication suddenly hung up. The captain was a bit confused, not knowing what had happened on the main ship. It seemed like an explosion. However, he didn't have time to think much and directly issued an order to his formation. Turn on the antimatter engine. Chase. The next second, 5 combat boats suddenly accelerated and sped towards the direction of the moon. Chase, 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 I'll let you chase. Boom. A silver-blue figure suddenly landed on the bumpy surface of the moon, with tremendous power shaking out a layer of huge dust shock waves. Hua Ye's figure appeared in the smoke and dust. Holding the little groundhog and looking back into the distance, his eyes were indifferent, and a cold smile curved from the corner of his mouth. Angels are the most perfect living beings known to have evolved in the universe, and this is not just a statement. Although it seems to be overwhelmed by the powerful army in terms of cutting-edge force, the standard configuration of the second and third generations, the time and space wings, and single-body warp speed navigation, is a configuration that many soldiers of divine-level civilizations cannot match. In space, the Angel clan possesses individual mobility far beyond that of other civilization warriors. The distance between the Earth and the Moon, even if you take some time to slow down, can only be reached in a few seconds. This is just the speed of light at warp speed level 1. A spacecraft without warp or jump capabilities, even an antimatter engine spacecraft, can only be left far behind. I want to see which harmless civilization dares to attack me. Huaye turned around and looked at the surface of the moon without wasting time. Although the small formation could not reach here in just a few seconds, he knew that the biggest threat to him was not this small formation, but the massive fleet. A fleet that can activate wormhole jumps. 17,000 divine calendars. He looked at the ground in front of him and directly began the action that only he knew. I, Hua Ye, the king of the ancient heavenly palace, swear by the reputation of Roaning. Ah! Forget it, I don't need to be so clear with myself. At this time and place, I will definitely find a way to give the present me a silver blade in the future. Buried 10 meters underground in front of me. Oh, by the way, I want the same style as Somali. Waiting online, it's quite urgent. Then, Huaye immediately swung his long sword to excavate, with sword lights flashing one after another, and the moon soil flying up inch by inch. A few seconds later, a large pit as deep as 10 meters appeared before his eyes. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Slaying, New Deno, Rose. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Slaying, New Deno, Rose. At the bottom of the pit, a beautiful silver dagger lay quietly, flickering with a dangerous cold light. Dust and gravel are buried on its body, as if it has gone through many years of vicissitudes, just for this moment of seeing the sun again. Huaye looked at it silently, and for a moment, his heart was filled with mixed feelings. Shake, happy, grateful, but also feels somewhat absurd. But no matter what, he knew that his experiment on the future of time and space had been successful. I can play. Sherman gave a fair evaluation. How fun is it? I said there is a silver blade underground, so it has a silver blade. Upon hearing this, Huaye just smiled but didn't say anything. He raised his hand and the silver blade went straight through the wormhole to reach him. Without further ado, the short film had already been solved in an instant. He waved his fingers, and the silver blade circled around his fingertips like a eerie silver snake, with a skilled appearance that was completely unfamiliar. There is no doubt about this. Although in the original plot, Huaye seems to have no intersection with Silver Blade, only Kaisha, Liangbing, Somali, and Angelhiko have owned and used Silver Blade weapons, while Heshi, Running, and Du Qiangwei have successively used Star Destiny. But it should be noted that the first known person in the universe to control the Dark Silver weapon was actually his Heavenly Palace King Huaye. The Dark Silver weapon itself is a technological research achievement of male angels. Heshi is just a replica. If it weren't for Huaye's silver blades being recycled by Kaisha, he would have had a set of silver blade weapon libraries, and of course, he would be familiar with silver blade weapons. Actually, originally I wasn't going to experiment with the silver blade. But coincidentally, it's the most suitable one now. Hua Ye controlled the silver blade, looking back and calmly into the distance. The space scene on the moon is vast and profound, with the starry sky as the background. Hanging in the center of the sky is a huge blue planet. However, his gaze did not focus on it, but on the 5 increasingly close spots of light, which were the tail flames of the 5 rectangular battle boats chasing him. The light points were slowly slowing down, and unlike warp-speed navigation, antimatter-powered spacecraft could not stop suddenly. Hua Ye watched as they gradually approached the moon. Before long, Hua Ye's figure rushed straight to the sky, flying towards the 5 light spots. Without any delay or turning point, his figure quickly approached the enemy formation, with laser cannons and a touch of silver light passing by. Boom! Ah! The silver blade rode directly over the hull of a combat boat without any obstruction, instantly cutting it in half. The combat boat itself also exploded instantly, with flames soaring into the sky, shattering itself into pieces. Among the wreckage of the spaceship, there are occasionally several severed limbs and arms. If one day your land falls into war and the heavenly palace presses down. Hua Ye hovered between the remaining battle boats, his wings flipping and his agile figure making it difficult for the opponent to touch. He could even see the shocked face and incredible gaze inside a battle boat. You are your civilization, the greatest sinner. Hua Ye smiled lightly, but his eyes were filled with indifference. The silver blade spun back and forth, turning back and forth like a silver lightning bolt, chopping melons and vegetables, swiftly passing through battle boats and chopping them into 2 pieces. Boom! 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 In just 3 to 5 seconds, without any doubt, several combat boats were all scrapped. However, the last battleship did not explode into powder. Hua Ye retrieved the silver blade and took out a soldier from the combat boat who had been seriously injured and unconscious due to being pierced by the silver blade. He looked at the soldier and also at the remaining combat boats. Data flashed rapidly in his eyes. Retrieve target civilization information. Searching. Soldier Ryan. Belonging to the Vanguard Corps of the new Deno Civilization Light Shield Fleet. The new Deno civilization was established by Deno immigrants after the Deno War. Regent. Goodall. Commander-in-Chief, Calvin. General of the Light Shield Fleet. Joshua. Capture the time and space roses, freeze the earth. New Deno, Light Shield Fleet, Joshua. By reading the soldier's dark data, Hua Ye quickly obtained a large amount of data, and then raised his eyebrows, his eyes becoming more dazed. In an instant, he seemed to remember something. The Supernatural Academy manga, the prequel to Rose. I said, where did these bad guys come from? Throwing away the fallen soldiers of Shinda Noa casually, Hua Ye had already understood what time he had arrived. It is not the plot of a supernatural seminary or a military company, but rather a comic book plot of a supernatural seminary. He has seen it in his past life. Although I don't remember it very clearly, I still know the general plot direction. The plot of this comic is about Du Qiangwei before the start of the Xiongbing Company. And a part that is currently related to him should be. After the activation of the temporal and spatial genes of the Du Rose, it was learned by the distant New Deno civilization that the New Deno civilization had taken a series of actions in order to regain the temporal and spatial rose, the cultural treasure of the Deno civilization, and increase the discourse power of the New Deno in the cosmic civilization jungle. They demanded that Tukeo hand over the temporal and spatial rose, but Tukeo refused. Later, the New Deno civilization dispatched a super warrior from the time and space system. The Blade of Time rose. The Light Shield Fleet then arrived. They want to take Du Chang away through the Rose and the Light Shield Fleet, but in the first step of contact with Du Chang, the Rose is infected by the colorful life on the earth and the happy time with Du Chang, and gets along with Du Chang like a sisters. In fact, Rose and Rose Du are indeed sisters. Rose is a beautiful woman, and she is also the carrier of the spatiotemporal gene developed by Shinda Noa. Rose should be considered as betraying Deno. She values her relationship with Du Qiangwei more and has no attachment to herself in Deno. In fact, it is not worth lingering on. To a certain extent, New Deno is a deformed civilization, and she has no warmth towards what she does. Without the help of Roses, even Roses were still protecting Du Chang, and the New Deno Light Shield Fleet was unable to achieve its goal. Fleet General Joshua even suffered a considerable loss on Earth until he completely lost patience. Finally, with the support of New Deno Commander Calvin in the distance, Joshua issued a warning to Dutsao that if Earth did not hand over the time and space Rose within an hour, the Light Shield Fleet would directly freeze the entire Earth. Later, Roses burst into the Light Shield Fleet, and Roses fell at the cost of their own. It's really special to come earlier than to come more coincidentally. After thinking through all the joints, Hua Ye was also somewhat speechless. Together with him, he was truly a complete disaster, blown by the wind of war. But do I remember that Joshua seems to be a divine body? Or is it a second-generation divine body? TSK, the Super Theological Academy's broken design is in a mess. Looking at the distant Earth, Huaye pondered and said, at this moment, Du Qiangwei and her companions should. TSK. A few seconds later, he flew straight in the direction he was coming from. Not long ago. Earth, Xia Kingdom, Juxia City. Bureau of Extraterrestrial Civilization Organizations. Outside a command hall, Du Qiangwei, dressed in camouflage, leaned against the half-open door of the hall, listening to the voices of everyone in the command hall. His expression was desolate. Report. The satellite image did not show any abnormalities. Report. Unable to search for signal source. Report. High-energy reaction detection has no abnormalities. The voices in the organization bureau kept coming, although it was lively, Du Qiangwei could only hear some helplessness from it. The Black Great Wall project has been transferred, I suggest starting immediately. She heard Aunt Lianfeng's voice. Although she didn't know what the Black Great Wall was, she understood that the Earth had reached a critical moment. Aunt Lianfeng is currently an intelligence officer of the Extraterrestrial Civilization Organization Bureau. It's not yet the last moment. However, for Lianfeng's suggestion, Ducao in the hall did not accept it, but said seriously, the launch of the Black Great Wall is irreversible, which is too fatal for a pre-nuclear civilization. The other party is from Denoxing, there is still room for mediation. Continue searching for the position of the main ship of the Light Shield Fleet. The hall was noisy, but Du Qiangwei had no mood to listen anymore. She came to a French window in the corridor, held the railing and looked out of the window. Am I really that important? Her eyes were filled with sadness as she looked towards a beautiful woman with light blue long hair behind her. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Unleashing Gene Prohibition. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Unleashing Gene Prohibition. This woman is dressed in a beautiful and neat gray shirt and pleated skirt, with a calm and gentle face and an excellent figure. She is a rose. She and Du Qiangwei stood together as if they were two real sisters, one with long wine red hair and the other with light blue hair. For me, some have shed blood and sacrificed themselves, some have betrayed their compatriots. Now, it's even more exaggerated. To the point of destroying the earth. Du Qiangwei was puzzled and her eyes were filled with resentment and sadness, making it difficult to understand. Is it worth it? Super genes, the super genes of gods and ghosts. Indeed, this super gene has given her an advantage far beyond ordinary people, and has also brought her unimaginable wonders. In the army, she relied solely on her hand-to-hand combat power to defeat the entire team invincible, even the most powerful special forces king is not her sole enemy. Under the guidance of Roses, she gradually mastered the power of genes and was able to solve wormholes. She became Superman, but with it came various open and hidden arrows, bloodshed and sacrifice. Foreign forces covet her power, and there are also traitors within the organization who conspire and attempt to control her. In these days, she has gone through many tasks, cracking down on crime, and many comrades have sacrificed themselves to protect her. Now it's even harder to understand. The Earth is in imminent danger. Even with only 1 hour left, your potential is completely beyond your imagination. If you are willing, you can even destroy a planet in the future. Rose looked at her gently and answered her question seriously. Potential. Potential. If I could, I would be the first to send them back to their hometown. Du Qianwei suddenly hit the wall next to them, gnashing her teeth with hatred. Why? Those aliens, why can they invade her country at will? Dare to easily claim to destroy the Earth. Countless lives in their eyes are like ants. I'll go find Lao Du. I'll go and die with that grandson now. She said as she turned around, her eyes filled with resentment and anger. The person who easily said they would destroy the Earth. Joshua. She's going to stuff his head into his asshole. Don't go. Rose quickly called out to her. The worst thing is to be brought back to that Deno galaxy. What's the big deal? Du Qianwei asked in reverse. She knew that the ultimate goal of this enemy from the Deno civilization was still to get her. Upon hearing this, Rose hurriedly said, I don't want you to be the next me. She spoke as if she had also thought of some bad memories, with a hint of pain and desolation flashing in her eyes. Du Qianwei was puzzled and said, what does that mean? Another you. These days, she gets along well with Rose, which is her only true friend and sisters in these years. But she had never heard Rose's mention her past stories. Rose has no tricks, just a beautiful and gentle face with some sadness. The only theme of life is slaughter. Being tested and stimulated countless times by various instruments, just to seek breakthroughs. Because of others' little fear, they will be deprived of the right to think. Her eyes couldn't help but show pain once again. In fact, she was not so sentimental before. She used to be almost numb, but it was only after coming to the colorful Earth that she became more aware of how real the pain was. The new Deno civilization is an extension of the Deno civilization, inheriting some of the technology and deformities of the Deno civilization. Even due to the painful past caused by the destruction of Deno, the development of new Deno has become even more extreme. Some people there are extremely averse to technology and also to gods, they only want to live a peaceful life, and others still yearn for the power of technology, but they want to control God completely. And all of this has become the root of her pain. As a war machine, there are no human rights. She is gentle and beautiful, but only a technology carrier that can be experimented with at will. She bears any pain without any resistance, without any dignity. She is young and agile, but she has no life of her own, and with her forever there are only tasks and killings. She can't even think, she has to completely obey orders. And once she has any ideas, she will be brainwashed mercilessly. Believe me, that's not a life you can tolerate, Rose said seriously as she looked at the Du Rose, who was just like her sister. She knew that once Du Qianwei was brought back to Shindanoa, the fate waiting for her would only be the same as hers. Become a war machine without any dignity, without allowing thinking, and without self. Hanging like a puppet in a huge bottle, surrounded by staff outside, operating and waking up naked from another jar. Du Qianwei roughly understood the words of the Rose, and her heart instantly felt heartbroken. However, she couldn't think much about it for now. She said, what else can we do? We can only watch them do whatever they want. She heard Joshua's ultimatum to old Du, giving Earth only 1 hour. If she is not handed over in an hour, the Light Shield fleet will freeze the entire Earth. Not only will the Earth be devastated, but she will also be captured. This is a dead end. This. Rose hesitated for a moment and then made up her mind directly. I'll help you. She has no conditions, and her emotions are also very simple. In her eyes, Du Qianwei is her closest person. As she spoke, she closed her eyes and entered the dark plane. Search for the position, range, and earth of the main ship of the Light Shield Fleet. She gave instructions to the genetic system. The search range is too large and cannot be supported by your own energy. Please re-enter the command. The feedback from the system is not satisfactory. Rose frowned lightly. After all, she was just a second-generation divine body. Although her abilities were relatively comprehensive, her height was ultimately limited. Release the genetic restriction. Release all energy. She continued to give instructions without any hesitation. Warning. After lifting the ban, genes will enter an irreversible program and may face the risk of collapse. Should we lift it? Rose closed her eyes, and in an instant, these days and the happy moments of Du Rose flooded into her mind. Without hesitation, she continued to order release. Searching for the position of the main ship of the Light Shield Fleet, location data of a small aircraft detected, explosion data detected, near coordinate search, detected the position of the main ship of the Light Shield Fleet, localized. Rose opens her eyes and looks at the Rose. Du Qiangwei asked anxiously, how is it? Have you found it? Found it. Let's go stop him now. Rose opened the insect door and jumped in directly with Du Rose. Although Du Qiangwei did not notice, the ability of Rose's seems to have become stronger at this time. Of course, in her eyes, Rose's have always been strong. The wormhole opened and closed, and in the blink of an eye, Du Rose and Rose arrived in a spaceship. Who? What's going on? Joshua's voice came from inside the spaceship. At the same time, a fierce and scorching whip struck Du Qiangwei and her companions. TSK TSK TSK. This Deno civilization is really full of disasters and difficulties. It seems that I don't even need to take action anymore. When Hua Ye flew back to the vicinity of the Light Shield Fleet and saw the situation, he couldn't help but chuckle. Against the blue background of the Earth, a large flagship and 3 medium battleships are the main configurations of the Light Shield Fleet in front of us. Small combat boats are supporting the main ship, as if there is some commotion happening inside the main ship. In fact, through some of the damaged parts of the main ship, Huaye could feel the violent combat fluctuations inside. The Earth side couldn't find the enemy ship's location. Rose lifted her genetic restriction to help Du Rose fight. Fall. He recalled the plot for a moment and clicked, I don't know if this time the Rose has lifted its genetic restriction. I remember that she was also a very beautiful girl. He touched his smooth chin and felt somewhat regretful at the thought of the beautiful girl who might have fallen. The silver blade flew around him, constantly piercing and exploding small combat boats as it approached the fleet. Go in and take a look. Vivi, I will spoil you more than Liang Bing. End of this chapter. Chapter 9 Huaye. I am a good person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Huaye, I am a good person. With a shudder of his wings, Huaye's figure flew directly towards the main ship of the Light Shield Fleet. Along the way, any new diner warriors he encountered who wanted to stop or attack him were quickly dealt with a silver blade. One knife at a time. Even naval guns or laser bombs cannot get close to him at all. The most distinctive weapon in this supernatural universe, in the hands of those familiar with it, immediately displays its full power. Out of reach. Unstoppable. Boom. 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 In the space around the fleet, the sound of explosions was incessant, and one after another, the flames of explosions were dazzling, leaving only the remnants of the warship's explosion. Yaha, not even the shield is open. It wasn't until he was completely close to the main ship that Huaye realized that the so-called Light Shield Fleet's main ship seemed like an experienced mature woman, opening its doors and waiting for the arrival of Mr. Hua. Of course, it's useless even if it's turned on. The General Force Field Energy Shield is completely ineffective against the Dark Dragon's silver weapon. Only advanced shields such as the Time and Space Shield or the Void Shield can withstand the Dark Dragon's silver weapon. And it is obvious that warships of this level in front of Huaye cannot have the ability to activate the space-time shield. Not to mention the void shield, the main storyline has not yet begun, and Karna Bison dare not reveal any void abilities. It is still a long way from opening the door to the void age. Brush. Brush and brush. Roaming with a gentle flick of his finger, the silver knife light instantly made a huge opening on the main ship of the light shield fleet. The square and heavy bulkheads fell, and Huaye swaggered straight towards the interior of the main ship. The dark Su silver weapon is agreed upon when used. In front of it, no matter what indestructible aerospace-grade alloy, or mysterious dark alloy armor, the ancient silver armor of the female angel, or the blazing blade, they cannot withstand a single blow. Given the universe, only the flame sword series of female angels can withstand one or two more attacks. I once loved about 40 women, they say I'm the most shameless man, I always keep that innocence, don't let them kiss my lips, after entering the interior of the main ship, walk all the way, no different from the outside. Occasionally, a soldier who was obstructed would fall weakly as a silver light flashed by. Silver blade weapons, string one upside down, string one row upside down. Hua Ye hummed a pure and innocent tune, following the energy fluctuations of the battle, all the way to the command room of the main ship. Standing at the door, he saw the situation clearly and was overjoyed. TSK 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 sure enough. Curly, round. The battle in the command room was extremely intense. Apart from the other soldiers who had fallen to the ground, a blond man waved his fiery whip and fought back and forth with two stunning women. However, Huaye's gaze instinctively focused on the stunning figure of the wine-red-haired woman. Confirmed at a glance. It's this stock. Speak up. Where exactly is that damn thing that froze Earth? In the command room, Du Qiangwei waved a dagger and fiercely stabbed the blond man, while scolding and shouting. Huaye glanced at it slightly, and it should be considered a dagger made of dark alloy material. It was very simple, but there was also a possibility of breaking through the first and second generation divine bodies. However, Du Qiangwei's hand-to-hand combat ability may seem slightly immature, but it is still decent, as she continues to attack the blonde man with the help of the pleated woman with light blue long hair. The woman with light blue long hair holding a long knife should be a Rose. The blonde man holding a long whip should be General Joshua. Touch. Wow. Intense energy is wreaking havoc in the command room, with the floor and surrounding workstations occasionally being blown apart and splattered with debris. The three of them were engaged in a fierce battle, and for a moment, they did not notice Hua Ye's arrival. Ha! If you win, then ask. Xiao Shuya just sneered at Du Qiangwei's words, you earthlings must pay the price today. He said, waving his fiery whip, and the raging energy bombarded out along the unpredictable trajectory of the whip. Boom! It's like a bomb exploding. Rose quickly dodged with Du Rose, who didn't have time to react, and her whip blasted a huge hole on the ground, splattering fragments. Although Xiao Shuya was only one person, she relied on her powerful energy and experience to suppress Du Qiangwei and her two opponents. The rose of time and space can only bloom in the Deno galaxy. He controlled the fiery whip with his right hand, lifted it with his left hand, and a raging flame rose up in an instant. After a short period of energy storage, I suddenly shot towards the rose. The Deno galaxy does not accept traitors. Traitors are even more despicable than enemies. This includes you. It also includes Cao, and the time and space rose. Du Qiangwei is a warrior, she chooses to swear to protect the earth to the death. Rose held her sword to resist, but unexpectedly, her long sword was shattered by the flames. Die. Joshua's face carried a bloodthirsty excitement and a twisted and ferocious expression. The long whip waved and rolled directly towards the white and tender neck of the rose. A faint and imperceptible sound suddenly sounded, as if metal had penetrated something. Joshua's figure suddenly stiffened. After a brief pause, he fell weakly to the ground, spitting blood from his mouth. Du Rose and Rose suddenly felt a little confused, but soon they sensed something unusual and instinctively looked at Joshua's back, as well as at the door on one side of their bodies, their expressions tense. At the back of Joshua's heart, a delicate dagger with blood floated up, then spun and floated into Huaye's hand. Hua Ye held a silver blade and hummed a tune leisurely, then walked slowly towards the direction of the three of them. You are. Du Qianwei looked at Huaye with some happiness and some vigilance. Rose is also a bit more cautious. In a short moment, the rabbit rose and fell, and no one had time to think too much, but she could feel that this sudden arrival was very powerful. Moreover, the silver dagger in the opponent's hand is extremely dangerous. Looking at the white wings behind the other person, I felt a bit puzzled. I'm a good person, Huaye replied with a smile as he looked at the tender Du Rose. Du Rose and Rose exchanged a glance at each other. Not like. Dang 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 dang. Huaye ignored the vigilance and speculation of the two and continued to walk in front of Qiao Shuya, who was lying on the ground and unable to stand up. Without saying anything, he raised his finger and cut off each other's limbs with a sharp silver blade. Ah! Joshua, who was already seriously injured and on the brink of death, suddenly screamed in pain. You! He spat out blood, but still glared angrily at Huaye. This person is extremely cunning and despicable. Not only did they take advantage of his battle with others and silently ambush him, but they also stabbed him in the back, causing him to lose his ability to resist. Now he has cut off his hands and feet in such a sharp and cruel way, without giving him any chance to fight back. Looking at his detached arm and whip, his eyes were filled with unwillingness. Me. Are you trying to say I ambushed? Hua Ye seemed to have completely understood the other person's thoughts, and his gentle smile made people feel cold in their hearts. He crouched down and pinched Joshua's head with one hand. The bloody silver blade patted the opponent's face and smiled, "Young man, open your dog's eyes and take a closer look. Do you recognize me? You." Qiao Shuya saw Hua Ye's outfit clearly and her pupils shrank in an instant. Obviously, he had already realized who this winged guy was. But his mouth was full of blood, and his consciousness began to blur. He just murmured with hatred, "Shinda Noa won't. Let go of. Yours." As soon as the head droops, there is no more vitality. Huaye let out a chuckle, then let go of his head and stood up. Suddenly, a kick flew up and Joshua's body was kicked into the wall like rags. Damn it, what level? Dare to have the same hair color as me. Huaye gave him a disdainful last glance and cursed ominously. He once thought that his first risk in this world would be brought by angels, at least it would be if Ruan-Ning realized something was wrong with him, or if some great god saw a flaw in him, but he didn't expect it to be such an unremarkable person. Shaking the blood from the silver blade, Huaye elegantly wiped her hair and looked at Du Qianwei and her companions with a friendly smile, saying, "Hi. I, Huaye, have just arrived in Baodi, two beautiful women with noble names." Du Rose and Rose exchanged a glance. Not like. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Rose, I'm running out of time. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Rose, I'm running out of time. My name is Du Qianwei, a soldier on Earth. Hello. Huaye. After 2 seconds of silence, Du Qianwei pursed her lips and still answered Huaye's question. Although the other party's sneak attack, ruthless methods, and somewhat mischievous style do not seem like a good person, especially the seemingly friendly smile that cannot be concealed by the squinting gaze, which makes people more alert. But no matter what, the other party helped them solve their enemies, which is also considered a great help to them. Not responding is definitely impolite. Rose. The voice of the Rose is peaceful but concise. She just moved lightly and inadvertently blocked Du Qianwei behind her. The atmosphere seemed somewhat silent, but Du Qianwei and the other two had some time to carefully examine Huaye. Golden short hair, with a golden belt on the forehead, a handsome face, and a large nose, looking around 30. In Du Qianwei's eyes, this Huaye looks very much like a medieval aristocrat on earth, and his attire is indeed in that style, elegant and luxurious. Wearing a blue and silver patterned battle armor, and a noble cloak, no wonder this guy calls himself some kind of king. Maybe he's really some kind of king. And that pair of snow-white wings that cannot be ignored, the most angels. This is a subconscious word that popped up in Du Qianwei's mind. Also, what he is holding in his arms seems to be something of a small pet, looking like a big mouse wearing armor. Overall, it seems that friends are not enemies, or most likely not enemies. Oh, it turned out to be Miss Du Qianwei, Miss Rose. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. Hua Ye still had a smiling expression, making it difficult to understand the depth. Du Qianwei nodded and said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Huaye. I haven't thanked you yet." Boom. Before she could finish speaking, a loud bang interrupted her, and the interior of the spaceship trembled violently with the loud bang. In an instant, the faces of Du Rose and Rose changed greatly. Inside the spacecraft, there is also red light flashing non-stop. Not good. Our battle has caused serious damage to the spaceship, and the spaceship may explode soon. Rose, seeing everything, looked around and immediately said. Du Qianwei suddenly realized something and quickly said, "We haven't solved the problem of freezing the Earth yet. Follow me." Rose pulled up Du Rose and ran towards a certain spot on the spaceship. Huaye was suddenly left in place, and in the end, he didn't hear all the thanks. However, he shrugged casually, holding the little groundhog and leisurely following behind the two of them. Bang! In front of an alloy gate on the spaceship, the Rose suddenly flew up and kicked fiercely. Boom! The slender and powerful long legs immediately kicked the door into a hollow. Bang! Boom! With another kick, the alloy gate was forcefully kicked open and flew backwards. Hua Ye couldn't help but twitch his eyelids when he saw this place. These big long legs are really powerful, found it. Here. After entering another room, Rose directly saw a thick and tall yellow pillar, with a surprised expression on her face. Underneath the yellow giant pillar is a huge alloy base. The exterior of the pillar appears to be made of transparent glass material, while the interior seems to be filled with surging energy slurry. Huaye looked around and saw that this was probably the weapon activation system of the so-called Frozen Earth. In his memory, Joshua gave the Earthlings 1 hour of time, which is to design a 1-hour countdown for this weapon system. Start docking with the target program and lift the countdown. Rose didn't even have time to think much, so she stood in place and directly connected and modified the program for the yellow giant pillar. "I'm with you." Du Qianwei also stood beside the Rose. Although she hesitated for a moment, she glanced at Huaye leisurely watching the play behind them. And Huaye just shrugged casually. The joys and sorrows of people are not interconnected. Although he also does not want the Earth to be destroyed, because once the Earth is destroyed, all of Mr. Hua's plans will go wrong, but he does not need to show much anxiety and nervousness. Because he knew that in this original plot, the Rose successfully saved the Earth. After all, little Pokeball's fate was too high and indestructible, so he doesn't need to do anything more. In case his little butterfly extinguishes the Earth's fan, his ex-wife, who is known to be the most powerful in the universe, is likely to cause trouble for him. Of course, he also knew that Du Qianwei was worried that her enemies and friends were unknown, but she didn't have time to say anything more. Program modification in progress. Program modification acceleration. Hurry up. The battleship roared, with occasional explosions. Rose and Du Qianwei looked anxiously and nervously at the yellow pillar, while the biological computer rapidly modified the system program. Hua Ye looked at the two of them and then looked around at the collapsing warships, suddenly feeling a little guilty. He seems to remember something. Both of them are genes from the time and space system. Regardless of whether the program modification is successful or not, the other person opens a wormhole and runs away, while he at this point, he silently waved his fingers and used a silver blade to open a door on the battleship's cabin wall before continuing to watch the play. Program modification completed. The countdown has ended. Let's go. In a few seconds, Du Qianwei and the others turned around directly. Hua Ye was stunned for a moment without resistance and was directly led into a wormhole by the two of them. The wormhole opened and closed, and 3 people and 1 mouse instantly disappeared in place. Bang! A few seconds later, in space, the 3 of them saw the main ship explode from a distance. Hua Ye looked under his feet and realized that he was standing on the top of a battleship of the new Deno, and immediately had a great time. Not bad. I can actually calculate the second-generation divine body of this king. He looked at the rose with admiration in his eyes. Although there is still some regret in my heart. In that short period of time, although he could successfully escape himself, these 2 kind-hearted girls directly took him out with a wormhole. It is not something that ordinary people can do to solve unfamiliar divine bodies of the same level. After all, whether it is roses or roses, they are only second-generation divine bodies. Including the previous Joshua. Not to mention Du Rose, she is still very immature at this time. In Hua Ye's view, there is only one possibility that roses can solve their second-generation divine body without any other computing backend. She lifted her genetic restriction. TSK, finally. It's all over. Standing on this battleship, Du Qianwei looked at the exploding flames and suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, with a relaxed smile on her cold and pretty face. Yeah. It's all over, Rose nodded as she looked at Hua Ye, and then agreed with a hint of emotion. At this moment, neither she nor Du Qianwei was on guard against Hua Ye anymore. After all, there was a great favor from the previous help, and during the emergency just now, Hua Ye did not ambush them. Strangely, a trust relationship is instantly established. At this moment, Du Qianwei turned around and said, "By the way, Mr. Hua Ye, I haven't thanked you yet." Cough. Hua Ye didn't finish listening to these thank you words, but Du Qianwei seemed to suddenly suffocate. Hua Ye raised his eyebrows directly upon seeing the situation. Rose also seemed to react and directly opened the wormhole to take the 3 people inside the battleship. The interior of the battleship was empty, and the 3 of them were in an unmanned corridor. Upon entering, Du Qianwei barely took a breath and said, I'm going. I almost suffocated. How come you're okay? Hua Ye chuckled directly at the sight and said, "We are a higher civilization, and of course we are different from you, a backward earthling. Little girl, are you lacking in oxygen?" Undoubtedly, Du Qianwei had just suffered from hypoxia in space. After all, she did not have any dark alloy armor to assist at this time. As is well known, among the many divine civilizations in the universe, only Earth's super warriors need oxygen in space, and even the god of war on Nova needs to wear an oxygen mask, whispering. Upon hearing this, Du Qianwei rolled her eyes and let out a disdainful moan. What kind of bullshit advanced civilization? Oh, by the way, thank you for the previous incident, Hua Ye. She finally took the time to express her gratitude, although her tone was a bit casual. Although it is not yet possible to fully confirm the enemy and friends, this person does not seem very hostile at all, and his bad appearance does not appear arrogant. She seems to have met a new type of alien. Hua Ye smiled and said, "My lord Hua Ye, it would be most appropriate for you to call me Hua Ye Wang." Du Qianwei was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "I understand, Hua Ye." Hua Ye. Du Qianwei smiled and said, "Hey. Hua Ye, can I ask you?" However, before she could finish speaking, her figure suddenly softened and she fell to the ground. Hua Ye shook her head with a tsk. This girl had poor luck with her mouth today and could only speak in half. Then, he looked directly at the Rose with a curious gaze. Rose withdrew one hand from Du Qiangwei's head and looked at Hua Ye, whispering, "I'm sorry to disturb your conversation, but I don't have much time." End of this chapter.